Morning, everybody. How's it going? I'm going to apologize in advance. I've got a cold, so if I start hacking, I apologize. Yeah, I know that's not fun to hear me cough. So, anyway, I got some good feedback, and I welcome more on ideas of things you want to hear, because obviously I've got ideas and stuff, but I'd much rather talk about things you guys are interested in stuff and throw my 2 cents in on it and such. Clearly, because I have mood disorders and, can empathize and relate to people that have them, as well as then obviously working with spouses and how that all works. That's a thing that, I feel like I'm pretty comfortable talking about. So I think the one that came up, which is I think a really good one, is for those that are spouses or significant others or just, family friends that are trying to help out someone that has a mood disorder. What do you do? Because this is really complicated, and I think this is probably one of the greatest sources of tension and conflict, because the ability to communicate coherently when you're struggling is out the window. You are not usually in a place where you're thinking straight, thinking clearly, whether you're upset, whether you're anxious, whether you're depressed, whatever emotion that you're experiencing at that moment in time, you're not going to be a very good ally to that person that's trying to help you. Now, I will preface this by saying that it is always a two-way street. It's important, excuse me, it's important that, and I talked about this in another session, that when you are the individual that has the mood disorder, there is a certain degree of accountability. You just can't put this all on the person that's helping you. You just can't wash your hands of it. Clearly there's stuff, though, that we can't control, and I think that's what I'm trying to speak to, is that there is stuff that inevitably is going to be an issue, and we need to figure out the best way to work together on this. That's maybe where I'd start, is I'd say it has to be a team. When you're doing this, you need to think about it as far as how you are trying to help each other, basically reach one another when things are tough. I talked about that treatment plan. I threw that up on Facebook. It's on my website, jasonpeterson.com. I think having some of those tools in place prior to is one great thing to consider, because then you can document how you can help me and things you can do to interrupt the situation when things are really, really bad. So the treatment plan, big time. Can't reiterate that enough. Now, I think in terms of the mindset, I can't speak for everybody, but my counselor once told my wife that when I was at my worst, my wife needed to think of me as like a 8-year-old in a dark room that's just frightened to death of everything. There's monsters all around me, and you're, emasculated, if that's the right word. You're no longer strong. You feel weak. You feel insignificant. All those emotions that are just pounding at you that are untruthful, but you're in a really, really vulnerable place. And it could be whether you're really anxious, in which things are just rapid and you're just totally wound up, or you could be upset. But either way, I would bet that every single person that has a mood disorder feels self-conscious and feels embarrassed by what they deal with, and they are insecure. So maybe that's the word I would use, is there's a sense of insecurity that exists, period. And it's there, whether they admit it or not. So if we start there, we know that you have an individual that is with you that is already, feeling not comfortable and feeling uncertain about their well-being. Some of it could be worse than others. Some of them could feel like that they're just a mistake. I've talked about, you're loved, you're accepted, God loves you. A lot of people don't feel that way. And so if you're in that place, you're looking at someone that is very fragile. And I think one of them, Gal, mentioned about walking on eggshells, and she's right. That's the unfortunate thing, is we end up being really sensitive because we're so struggling so much. So I think if you look at it that way and trying to say, I know that when this person's struggling, they're not like the adult that I know. They're really in a place where they are so devastated and in a bad place that I need to look at them through a different lens. And I think if you do that, your expectations change. So you must change your expectations in terms of what this person's capable of in this state. And I think compassion is huge, even if they don't deserve it. Like I always say that when my wife would like extend her hand and just put her hand on my shoulder, even if I was really being annoying and I was struggling and I was blubbering and I was unhappy, and she's like, babe, I love you. How can I help you? Those simple kinds of things where it disrupts any sort of argument or any sort of conflict. I mean, I'd argue that helps any kind of conflict, but especially with us, that's a big one. I think if somebody's angry, you just say, I love you. I understand you're in a bad place. I'm just going to give you your space. I'm going to walk away. And, if we want to talk about this, let's talk about this when you're in a better place. But just know I'm praying for you and I love you. Sounds cheesy, but that's the kind of stuff that I would say that you want to really think about, and I'd strongly consider when you're dealing with someone that has a mood disorder, that, they're at the root of all of it. We are insecure beings about what we have, because it's very slippery, and in some cases it's very non-tangible. And because of the stigma and everything associated with it, most of us feel inferior. And because of that insecurity, emotions, come out of that in a variety of ways. But if you can get to the root of it and say, I understand you feel, basically unhappy, or you feel uncomfortable, and you don't feel as worthy. All that kind of stuff, if you can empathize with that person and try to reach them where, it really matters, rather than trying to mess around with the surface stuff that they talk about, I think you're going to be able to help them a lot better. But again, got to talk the treatment plan. You need to talk about this in advance, so that when you're in the middle of a heated moment or a challenging moment or a meltdown or whatever it would be, that you already have the tools in place to be able to use them. Otherwise, you're going to be shooting from the hip, and I guarantee it ain't going to work. So there's my tips and my 2 cents on loved ones and how you can help someone with a mood disorder. God bless you always.